Welcome back. I have Tracy Goodwin here with me today, and I am so freaking excited to share her with you. Just real quick, I met Tracy through my business mentor, and she was giving a presentation at we'll call it a conference or a retreat that I went to. And I basically instantly fell in love. And there was like a breakout session afterwards that I went to, and she was just speaking. I'll speak directly to you, Tracy. You were speaking to my soul. And I decided in that moment that I would be working with you, and it was just a matter of when. And I followed up with her within a couple days. I keep on switching her and you. And yeah. And so then last year, I was in a group program that Tracy runs. And the gist of it is that she helps you see where your insecurities have basically gotten stuck in the muscle memory of your voice. And so I don't want to steal the thunder from you, but one line that I remember that you said around the first time I met you was, you could do 20 years of inner work and it's still stuck in your voice unless you address that. And I had never heard someone say that before, but I definitely have noticed subtleties in people's voices where I thought like, the one that pops in my mind is they seem to be pretending to be really nice. That one stands out to me. Now, all that to say, I eventually asked Tracy to come to my Brave Patient retreat, and that was last month. And we'll talk more about this during the episode, but she killed it. Everyone was blown away. Okay, without further ado, Tracy, anything that you want to say to introduce yourself?
Well, I hope I can hold up to that introduction because that was spectacular. Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here with you today. I just adore you. I adore your work. I think there's so much synchronicity between your work and my work. And so to have this conversation with you, I'm really excited about it.
Thank you. I'm so excited. Can you just tell us more about your story, how you got to do what you do? Because I don't know anyone else who does this. It's very unique.
I've scoured the earth a little bit to see if there's anyone doing something similar to what I'm doing. And there are a lot of voice coaches, which is what everybody that's ever met me says, do not ever let those words come out of your mouth again, because that's not what you're doing.
No.
At all. I work with the vehicle of the voice. And when people will say to me, how did you get into this work? My usual response is kicking and screaming, being drug in like a mule being dragged through the mud. It's not that I didn't want to do this work. It's that I couldn't fathom that this was my calling because of the environment I grew up in, which was an extreme version of children are to be seen and not heard. I will often go so far as to say I was raised in a family where I wasn't allowed to speak, which is pretty close to the truth. And there were a lot of really intense things that happened to me as I grew into an adult because we were never allowed to say no. We were never allowed to express any negative emotion. I knew, Steph, from a very early age that I could hear voices. But I thought everybody could hear the way that I can hear. I mean, up until really late 20s, I thought the whole world could hear 7 layers of sound. And what I now can retrospectively look at is go, okay, that was my practice ground because I really learned to navigate every single sound, to navigate safety in my world. People kept finding me to coach voices. I wanted to be an actor. And I made my living doing television commercials and directed plays all over the world. And this was crazy. This was Yellow Pages days.
Yellow Pages days.
Yep, yeah. Yellow Pages days. You had to find me in the Yellow Book. And Fortune 500 companies were finding me to coach their voices.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, this is so ridiculous. Why would I but I would go do it. I really was hung up about this imposter syndrome thing. Wow. And could I do this? And why was I being called to do this? And it was crazy. My actors would win voice awards because of what they were doing. I just didn't get it. I was Jonah in the belly of the whale.
You were in denial.
I was in hardcore denial.
You were.
Totally.
And that makes me wonder if anyone listening is going to be able to resonate with this. So if you're listening, ask yourself the question, like, what am I naturally really, really good at that I'm telling myself, no, everybody is good at that, or, oh, it's not that big of a deal, because that's your gift.
Yeah. And today, people, when they understand what I do, they're like, how did you learn that? How did you? And I said, I was born with it. It's literally a gift that eventually became my obsession and my research and my work. So I'm being an actor, I'm being a director, and people keep finding me to coach their voices. And even then, I knew I could hear voices, but I was doing typical voice coaching because I thought, well, that's what the other people are doing. I don't want to make anybody mad. I was the face of people pleasing. And so it tortured my soul, because I would sit with people and I would go, great, it's great. You know what? You just need to slow down. But in my head, I could hear they're wounded here. They're struggling. This is the sound that is repelling people, sound after sound after sound, but I'm doing the typical thing. And then
when
one
did
day,
that shift?
So one day
or did that take a while?
Pretty early on.
Okay.
Pretty early on, because when I say it tortured me, I struggled with two things. One, because of all my story and all my, what I now call voice stories and voice masks, I struggled with being able to say, well, you are repelling potential clients. I struggled with saying, being in alignment with what I heard. And then I was scared, but I was tortured because I wasn't saying what I heard. So one day I said, I'm done. I quit. I'm done. I'm going to be a furniture refinisher. And by this point, I'm living in New York City. I'm teaching for Mike Nichols.
Getting backbone, you just go work on furniture.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Because my best friend was the super of the building, and he was this big, he's still my best friend, big muscle guy. So Tony would drag we'd go find these pieces of furniture, like Ames stuff, like real nice stuff. We would find it. He was the muscles, and I would refinish the furniture. And so my whole little tiny New York apartment was full of furniture to refinish, and the phone would ring and ring and ring and ring for people wanting me to coach their voices. I never called them back, never even picked up the phone. And instead, all day, I would sand away the layers of the paint and the varnish and get those pieces back to their original beauty.
What a beautiful metaphor for the voice.
For the work that I do today.
Yes.
Right? And then one day I'm in there sanding away, and I hear, literally, I believe it was the voice of God in my head say, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing? Because I didn't put you down there to finish furniture.
Yeah.
And I had this little conversation where I said, okay, all right, I'll go back in the game, but I have to do it the way I know to do it. And literally that was it. That day I came back and I said, I've got to figure out what this is that I'm hearing that nobody else is hearing. And within 24 hours, I knew it was the psychology of the voice. I knew it was the subconscious. I knew I was hearing the wounds. And very shortly after that, I went and I did a workshop. I got back in the game, did a workshop, and a young man did a role play. And I said, oh, I get it. You fell in love with a girl and you moved down here. I was in Texas doing the training. I said, you moved here to Texas, but y'all broke up and you're not sure what you want to do. You think you're going to move back to Maryland, I believe, but you like it here. And he's like, everybody in the room. Yeah, it's jaw dropped. He said, how did you know that? And I said, because I was literally filing off every sound I heard and how it was being processed. And I said, did I get it right? And he said, yeah. And I looked around the room and I asked the participants in the room, I said, did y'all hear what I just identified? And they said, now we do. So by this point, I'm already a researcher. By this point, I'm already, because of my own insecurity, quantifying everything. Yeah. And I spent the next 10 years researching, is what I hear and can identify what the listener, the buyer, is processing. And I've not missed it yet 3 decades later.
I have a question about this. So my perception is that you're also getting like intuitive downloads about people. You're hearing things, but you're trusting whatever comes through. Is that your
Yep.
experience as okay. Yeah.
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 Yeah. And in the early years of when I agreed to stop being the furniture refinisher and agreed in my mind to come back, I thought they're going to think I'm crazy. They're going to think I'm crazy when I go, oh, you're the middle sibling, right? And nobody ever heard anything you had to say. In fact, you feel like you have to prove you are worthy, right? And, I mean, just like all of it. And
It's
I thought they're going to think I'm
fascinating.
crazy. They're going to reject me. And
They didn't.
and they didn't. And now
Mm-mm.
it's super fast, but I 100% trust my ear and I trust the
Yeah.
download and I
Yeah.
trust that I'm going to get them on the other side of it.
Yeah. Oh, I love that you just move through the fear because so often people experience the fear and that stops them and they never move forward. And it's like, okay, you can listen to the fear, you can honor the fear, you respect it, but you got to keep going. And
Yeah.
then it's like almost always wrong. Not every time, but almost always like, no, we love you, right?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like, what if, and I don't spend time on what ifs, but in relation
Yeah.
to what you're talking about, fear, what if I had stayed doing typical voice coaching because I
Mhm.
was so afraid that everybody would reject what I had to say and think I was crazy? That's what I would still be doing today. And then I would leave this earth
Yeah.
without serving the gift that I was given. And by the way, I believe everybody has a purpose, everybody has a gift. I hope everybody doesn't fight theirs like I did. And I'm grateful every day that I only fought mine up until, I don't know, maybe 24, 25. I was still in my 20s
You were. Okay.
by the time I was coaching voices. Now, I wasn't, it was my early 30s when I started doing what I now call psychology of the voice, but still,
Yeah.
and it doesn't have to be young. It could have been yesterday.
Right.
Stop fighting the fear, stop fighting the purpose, because the subconscious is going to say the opposite.
Yes.
I was at I don't remember even where I was the other day. I go so many places, and I said something about one of my biggest, what I call voice stories, was not being wanted. And
Hmm.
somebody in the room said, or we're all dying for you to be in here because it's like, we want to learn from you.
Exactly. Yes.
And we've got to be able to finish the sentence. I call it
Yeah.
finishing the sentence now. She finished my sentence that I ended with, well, I don't want to get in there and bother anybody. They maybe don't want me in there, or maybe they do.
Well, I'm so glad that you didn't continue sanding the layers of the furniture away and that you knew I was not put on this earth to do this. This
Yeah.
is not what I'm here to do.
Well, metaphorically, I had to learn that I was here to sand layers away. It just
Yes.
wasn't of
Those.
those layers. And that's literally what I do now. And it all just fell into place after that. Voice masks, the concept of voice stories, and the layers that the world has piled on us,
Yeah.
starting from before we're two, of this constant indoctrination of please be anybody but yourself. If you want to
Yes.
fit in, if you want to sell, if you want to be happy, at every turn, you've got to be somebody other than yourself.
That's what the world tells you.
Listen to the world, and the
Mhm.
world is a liar.
Yes. This is why I love you so much because the way that we're working with people is totally different, but our belief system overlaps extensively.
Yeah.
Yes. I was trying to think back on the spot to some of the feedback that you gave me when you were listening and
Um,
helping me uncover. I should have looked at that before this call. There was so much.
well, I can probably remember some of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, well, maybe I can't, but I
Well,
never forget a voice,
yeah.
which is kind of interesting.
Freaky.
Yeah, I called a customer service line one time and I went, Chris? And the guy's like, what? Who is this? I'm like, I talked to you about 4 years ago. And he's like, okay. Now I'm 100% okay with they can think I'm crazy all day long. But, there's patterns in a lot of it. Every voice is different. I believe they're like a thumbprint. And I hear 7 layers of sounds, and the wounding is different. There are many things that are different, but there are so many patterns that are
Yeah.
the same, like a hesitation
Yeah.
when somebody's trying to get it right, or
yeah. I'm sure that
a,
one was stuck in mine.
yeah, I think that I remember that one, but it's a very common one. It's
Mhm.
odd that not one of the first sounds that I hear, because what has the world taught us? What have parents taught us?
Yeah.
What have
There's a
siblings taught
right
us?
way and a
It's
wrong
right
way.
and wrong. I mean, the
You
whole
should
school
feel this
system.
way. You shouldn't feel that
Yeah.
way. You should do this for your job and not that for your job.
Yeah.
And yeah. Go to your room until you can
Yeah.
show up the way you should be showing up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you tell us just a few of the most common wounding that you pick up on in the voice?
Yeah. So there's 5 wounds. And when I
Yeah.
think about voice, I think about, okay, the sound is you're talking fast, let's say.
Okay.
Typical voice coaching would say, well, you need to slow down. So I'm not going to say that. I want to find the why behind the why behind the why behind the why. I want to go to the very back end of the why until there's
Yes.
nowhere else for me to go.
Yeah.
The very back end is always worth.
Mm-hmm.
Worth is playing out
Mm-hmm.
somewhere in the voice.
Yeah.
But the other ways it's playing out is fear of judgment, fear of abandonment,
Yes.
fear of rejection,
Yeah.
and sense of belonging. And
Yeah.
those sounds are all different. I can immediately identify them. You may have all of them, but there's always going to be one that rises to the top.
Yeah.
And so let's say it's a sense of belonging
Mhm.
can manifest in several different ways. It could manifest in, everything's great. Everything's wonderful. Oh my gosh. I love being with you. It's fantastic. You're amazing.
Mhm.
You're totally amazing. Everything's fantastic in my life. Don't you love to be around me because I'm fantastic?
Yeah.
So it could manifest that way, or it could manifest, well, what's the point anyway? So then when I show up, I would say, yeah, it's great to be here, Steph. Really, really appreciate you bringing me on the show. Like I'm taking up space because I created these stories that, well, you don't really want me anyway. You just, feel bad because you're not bringing, we build these stories. So those are
Every
the
day.
core wounds. They're really every sound, every mask fits back to one of them
Yes.
or multiple. And so we really have to address the wound
Yes.
in order to free the sound. And that's what you were saying in the intro.
Yeah.
You can have done the work and the wound is still embedded in the voice because it's the protection mechanism and it's the habit, and we can't hear our own things.
Yeah.
When I identify things, people will go, oh my gosh, how'd you know all those things? We identify the feeling, but we don't recognize that it's coming out in a sound.
Yeah. Yes. That resonates. When I was in your group program, it was a high touch group program for everybody listening, and meaning that we got a lot of group time and also one-on-one time. So she'd show up in our Voxer chat, which is a voice messaging and app. And you listen to a piece of content of mine, and then there's like 15 minutes of feedback. I'm like, okay. And then the things that you pick up on, I was like, for most of it, I'm like, yeah, that definitely something that I've worked to overcome, but clearly it was still there and I had no idea. It's just fascinating.
Yeah. Well, and it's see, like we can take you for an example, and you're the most perfect kind of person that I love to work with because you're doing the work. You're totally coachable. You're already great.
Yeah.
For me, this work, and I work with a lot of different people, a lot of different types of people. But for me, this is going from the GP to the surgeon.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna get real lasered, and I'm gonna go, when you transitioned into that offer, what did you want me to feel? Or when you said that price, did you think I was really gonna buy it?
Did you actually want me to buy it? I'm like, I thought I did.
Yeah. So it's this really cool next level. And we're not, as business owners, even trained to think about the voice. We're trained to think about the funnel and the leads and the price and the offer and the messaging. And all those things are important. But if I am repelled, which is a strong word, by your sound, I won't make it through the funnel.
Yeah. And that resonates. I have heard voices that I've felt like, nope, I don't know what's going on here. Especially now, I'm like, oh, they need to work with Tracy.
Oh, yeah. I ruined television and movies and life for anyone. But we all have sound diversions. And our sound diversions go back to our voice stories. Like, don't be getting loud with me. You louden me all the time. You took me right back to when I was 5. Well, you could be the very person that I need. But if you're working that one note only, it's a subconscious game that sound is really playing. It is an energetic, vibrational thing. And I am getting downloads constantly, but I also have really learned to feel into it and go, that's a cover up. I know you're telling me that's not what's happening, but I feel that it's a cover up because I can't feel you.
Yeah, I can't feel you. At Bravecation, I asked if you could demonstrate with the attendees where you just did your thing with one person. Sorry to put you on the spot there, but it was fascinating. So Tracy had people volunteer. Everyone actually wanted to do it. So then I did a wheel of names to randomly select someone. She got up in the room and she spoke maybe for a minute and a half.
Yeah.
And just told you, I don't know, random things about herself, right? I can't remember if you asked her a
who
question.
you are, what you do, what her work is, what about her family, something,
Yeah. And then I didn't time it, but it felt like you had 15, 20 minutes of things that you suspected were happening for her, things that you picked up on her voice, wounds that were there. And she just was shocked, like in awe.
Yeah.
How did you do this? Because you saw her like at her core where feels like people don't really see you like that.
I've been told that a lot. I have been told by many people, I've never felt so seen.
Yeah.
And see, this is one of the reasons we layer on these masks is because at the core, we're really not comfortable being seen, even though we desperately long for it. And I do it really fast now. I don't know if I did it this fast 2 decades ago. There was probably more second guessing, more let me analyze for a minute, more retrospectively. I would walk away and then it would just be this boom, 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 boom. That's exactly what you heard and you know it. Don't pretend like you didn't. Where now I'm just like, poof, this is what's getting in your way. And that's what it's really about. Is it getting in your way because it's costing you money and impact and fulfilling that purpose by showing up and talking about it and doing videos or whatever it is. And this is why I love the work. I call it internal freedom. And I suffered greatly because I couldn't use my voice. And many people on earth suffer greatly because they can't use their voice and they don't feel heard. True. And that pains me deeply. Yeah. And that's why I love the work. Like that. Doesn't have to be that way. Doesn't have to be that way. And I know you get that. And for those of you listening, I know I'm the guest on the show, but I'm going to give Bravecation a plug. Okay. Because that was the coolest thing I've ever done. If you have not done Bravecation, and maybe I'll come back sometime. Maybe you have me back sometime. But I
would love for you to come the whole time because I know you were just there for a few hours. Yeah.
I'd love to come the whole time. I had planned to come the whole time this time, and the world had different plans for me, but you got to do the work. I said to my students the other day, I said, I don't have a glitter bag. I wish I did. I had a glitter bag. I could fling it on you, and we don't do the work. But this is the work, and this is where the freedom lies. And I'm going to just tell you, your voice is your identity. You've got to be heard on this planet.
Yes.
And you got to do the things like Bravecation because we all have these massive amounts of layers, but I call it Earth School. I think it's why we're here to unlayer it. I don't know if M&M is the best description, but it's like pulling off the hard candy shell and getting to that ooey gooey delicious chocolate inside. And that's what you're doing. And it's, God, there's so much freedom into that.
I often say, and then my students who've been with me for a bit will reflect it back to me. Life doesn't have to be that hard. Like, of course, there's going to be challenges. There's going to be hardships. There's going to be things that you don't want to happen. And it doesn't have to feel like you're muscling through it. It doesn't have to feel painful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in a sense, I think of freedom like that. Like, what if?
Yeah.
I do like to ask what if questions. What if it's possible for you to go through those situations that are hard and feel through it rather seamlessly and rather quickly and be able to move on?
Yeah. I agree. And possibility is, that's the number one sound the brain wants to process.
Say more.
So we're operating from the wounds, and we're operating from subconscious stories that I'll call voice stories.
Yeah.
And then the sounds I call voice masks because they block connection. When we're working from that wound, we're working from the place of, well, I don't know if she's going to buy. So let me tell her about the offer. And I don't know if she really wants to, I don't know if I'm doing a good job. I don't know how, so there's a heaviness in my voice that your brain is indifferent to. So we talk about the attention span of the human brain is now under 6 seconds. Yes, it's very, very low.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hi, Stephanie. It's good to be here with you today. Wanted to tell you a little bit about my offer because I'm thinking there's no way she's going to buy my offer. Whatever it is, that heaviness, your brain goes, yep, I know what she's doing. Let's check Facebook.
Yeah.
And then you're gone. Where when I come in, oh my gosh, this could be totally different for you. Now, this doesn't mean that everything you talk everything from possibility, but when I plug in possibility, your brain goes, I want to hear more. I want to hear more, but I like where you're going with this.
Yeah.
Let me hear it instead of, yeah, I already know what she's doing.
Yep.
And there's so much power in sounds the size of a grain of sand. And we don't even think about it. And we're just operating from this place of insecurity or this place of what we know, like the being hard. I will tell people many times when they get here, you're exhausted. You're exhausted from holding up all the masks of being all the things that everybody in your world said you had to be. I agree.
Wrong.
Yeah, well, it doesn't have to be that way.
No.
Well, and this is why I think you feel this way. I don't know, but I think you got to have guides on this earth. You just do. My people can't hear what I can hear. Your people can't see or fully know what you can guide them through seamlessly and quickly.
There's no way. I mean,
No.
My belief system is God gives us all problems and he has people who can solve those problems. And like the whole thing is to work together to help each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. I personally have had a mentor or sometimes multiple since I was 25, the whole time. Someone guiding me to be more of who I wanted to be, which is, I didn't know in the beginning, but I know now actually more of who I already was.
Yes.
Without the insecurities, the defensiveness, all of that. Yeah.
I call it getting back to one. That's really what we're doing. We're not adding. I don't need to add a technique on. Right. Slow down, be louder. I'm not going to add any more on. We've got to pull those layers away because you never left.
Right. Yeah.
You just got covered up with being all the things that you thought you had to be because that's what we start learning when we come out of the womb.
Yep, exactly. Is there anything else about your story or what you do that you want to share before I ask one last question?
If I was going to add anything, I would say, don't run from the gift like I did. I tend to be a little slower on the take, but in retrospect, I can see that my greatest place of suffering was actually my greatest gift. And that was being raised in that family, which I don't have any angst about. I'm not like, oh, my mother, my sisters, not at all. Not at all. I couldn't be more grateful for what felt like so much pain and suffering at the time.
Yes.
Was to prepare me for the work that I do today. Don't ever look at your suffering and go, well, clearly I'm not supposed to do that. Or if you have a gift, embrace it. And you don't have to know all the answers. I mean, once I got in agreement, the downloads started coming and they've been coming for 40 years.
Yeah. Yes. I couldn't agree with that more. The reason I do what I do today is because of the hardship that I went through. And so once I looked at it like that, I didn't resist it anymore. I didn't wish it didn't happen. But before I used to, I wish this didn't happen. I wish I didn't have this experience. I wish I didn't have to go through that. And now I've just moved to a place of like, if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be me. I wouldn't be helping thousands.
Yeah, I got into victim mentality. Yeah. Why me? Yeah. Why do they all get a good life? Which is not, that's an illusion anyway.
Yes. Everyone is going through something.
Yeah.
Okay, last thing I wanted to ask you is if someone listening today feels broken or has times where they feel broken, what advice do you have for her?
There's a thing that I figured out a long time ago in this work, which is I'm going to play the stories in my head that are coming from what I perceive as brokenness.
Mhm.
Whatever that noise is, whatever that brokenness, I'm not good enough, I'm going to bother
Yeah.
people, all of that. The most powerful thing I think I ever created and ever did, even in my own life, because everything is tested right here
Yeah.
before I roll it out. One, know that there is no broken, like what we were talking about. I might have felt broken. My life was broken. There were very, very violent things that occurred in my life from this
Yeah.
brokenness. But I reframed that whole thing to see that all as a gift for one thing. So there really never was a broken in my mind. But what I got on board with was truly believing that everything was always working out,
Mm-hmm.
even when it did not look good.
Yeah.
And I've told this tactic to many, many people over the years where I was sweating it a little bit
Mm-hmm.
because they were in scenarios that didn't look good.
Yeah.
That total reframe in the subconscious of believing that no matter what it is,
Yes.
no matter what it looks like, no matter what, I believe that everything is working in my favor
Yeah. Yeah.
is probably the thing I would say has helped me get through the because I have felt that many times, that broken. I'm not wanted. That was my core wound, sense of
Yeah.
belonging. I wasn't wanted. And so that's a form of brokenness, but that's
Yeah.
not true. And so
Right.
knowing that everything is always working out,
Always.
there is no broken because it's always working out. It's always something is always working for my favor.
I love that so much. Yep. Thank you. Now, if listeners want to find you, what's the best place to find you?
So I am Captivate the Room everywhere. I would be Tracy
Okay.
Goodwin, but she's actually a romance novel writer. So if you look her up and you see a bunch of, hot guy covers, don't think I'm moonlighting as a romance writer. I'm not.
It's not
So
you.
that is not me. I'm Tracy Goodwin on LinkedIn, but
Okay.
otherwise I am Captivate the Room on social media. Instagram's a good place to find me, or captivatetheroom.com is my website.
Okay. I'll put your website and your Instagram handle in the show notes. So if you're listening and you want to follow or reach out to Tracy, just click the link in the show notes.
Great.
Thank you so much for coming on today.
Oh, thank you for having me. This was a great conversation.